Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barbin. Let's talk football.
Yeah, let's get to it. We're going to start with our best ever, then move on to our worst ever, and we got a couple other categories we got to give some flowers. But first, if you're watching and you like what we got here, please subscribe. That would really help. If you want to share it around with some friends, that would help us out too. We'd super appreciate it. All right, so why don't we just jump right in here?
Yeah, let's do it. How did you find putting these lists together?
I redid them 2 or 3 times.
I had a lot to choose from.
There was so much to choose from.
Yeah.
So I had I was trying to fit in the teams I wanted to talk about in a way that fit on the list. So let's see what we got here. Just go.
I had a hard time getting the worst ones, to be honest. I thought there was a lot of good stuff this week.
I kind of put like a couple of things in the worst ever because I wanted to talk about the other team. That was on the other side of the worst. But anyways, we'll get to it. There's a lot of good stuff this weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So my number 3, working from 3 to 1, is just the Big 12 on the best ever.
Okay.
So the Texas Tech Cincinnati game, they just play fun games. I know I think I said this a couple shows ago that Texas Tech seems to be involved in kind of wild games. And this one was exactly what I expected. Like they're just what they do. I don't know why that is, but they're just fun to watch now. So that game was a ride. And I think I got to keep them on the radar now for just how fun the games are going to be. Because on paper, I don't know. I just wouldn't have expected this out of a Texas Tech Cincinnati game, but that was fun. Mm-hmm. Did you get eyes on it?
No, but I saw the highlights and I thought you were going to start with the Kansas game, but it's because that one I think was pretty good too. But it's and then Colorado UCF, right? So there was a lot of good on the Big 12. That's a good one.
Well, I had Arizona upsetting Utah. That's another reason.
That's another good one.
Big 12 was on this list. Colorado showing up and actually playing a physical game on defense, actually with a run game, just a complete dominant game, which did not expect that at all from them. I know you thought that UCF, or you were kind of hoping UCF would just shove them around. Instead, it was the other way around. So my note here is I think they're contenders in the Big 12 now.
Yeah, well, this is my caveat that I'll, backpedal just a little bit on that statement. I had no interest in watching the old Colorado team, the team that could not run the ball, had no defensive line play, and it was just YOLO ball with Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter and see what makes it work. That was not the Colorado team that I saw on Saturday. They could run the ball. The offensive line looked the best they've looked at all season, and the defensive line looked incredible. Like they were the book was that UCF was going to run the ball all over them, and they stopped it. They played well. So that Colorado team, I'm a fan of. I can watch that every time because that looks like a regular football team that's playing well. So I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, with the best player in the game on that team.
Yeah.
And he's still doing it. He still looks like the best player. If people don't understand that, we're talking about Travis Hunter. I mean, it's just he's keeping his name in the ring here for a Heisman candidate. So, I mean, they're in the mix now. And the overall, I like the Big 12 is my scrappy conference because I don't think at the beginning of the season you could say with much confidence who the top, let's say, 4 teams in the Big 12 would actually turn out to be. But you could probably with almost 100% certainty pick the top 4 teams in the Big 10 and the top 4 teams in the SEC. And it's sort of like every year you kind of know. Like the deck might shuffle itself a little bit throughout the season, but in the end, you kind of know who's going to be there. I don't think you have any clue who was going to be there if you were trying to predict it at the beginning of this season, which leads me to the next game, the K-State completely dominating Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's just off the board now, and K-State's reasserted itself. And then I have 2 unexpected undefeateds, BYU and Iowa State.
Yep.
So, I mean, any of these teams are in the mix, which I'm not so sure people would have listed those specific. I think that's 6 teams that all of them are really in the mix. And I guess Utah still is, but man, they did not look good. Like it didn't look good.
No, and that was good to see K-State play that way. Like that looked like the BYU game seems to be just a speed bump now. Like how they played against Oklahoma State was what they looked like against Arizona and the other 2 teams to start the beginning of the season. So that, they were a really well coached team. They run the offense through the running quarterback and the run first, I think, to set up the pass. And and they're really entertaining to watch. So it's good to see that. I feel like that BYU game is just going to be a speed bump, and this is the K-State game that's going to, the K-State team that this is what they're going to look like for the rest of the season.
Yeah, but that's a bad speed bump if it comes down to a tiebreak and it is. BYU has it over them.
Yeah, very, very true. But I meant just in terms of playing, like they didn't look like themselves against BYU, and it was good to see the return to form against Oklahoma State. BYU is a problem. Like BYU is a really good team, and they're doing it in many different ways, and no, so I don't think they're undefeated, and they're going to be a problem going forward.
I'm thoroughly enjoying the new look Big 12. All right, so what do you got for number 3?
Okay, so my number 3 best thing from this weekend was the green jerseys from Notre Dame. So I always get nervous when they play them because they've got a really good record when they wear the green jerseys. And every now and then they pull them out. And I'm like, I don't know if I'd pull them out this week, because if it's a really tough game, I'm not sure you'd want to do that. I'm sure that's why they get them to wear them, because you're playing a good team and you sort of want that extra juice for the game. But I was like, oh man, a ranked Louisville team and coming in, I'm not sure about that. But plus the other thing is that it's that I've always termed it the big game jersey, and it always reminds me of Tom, a guy that we went to school with, that when we were at university, there was one of the options was to not count any quiz or midterm and put it all in the final. And so you could write 100% final if you wanted. And there's one semester he did it in 5 courses. So we had 5 100% finals and did well. And so we always said that he wore the big game jersey that week. So anyway, that's what it reminded me of with Notre Dame. So it's hats off to them for putting them on and playing well against, similar to the point we're making about Kansas State. It's the more of a return to form and good defense. And that's the best Riley Leonard's look too. So.
Yeah, that was a get right game. They needed that game. And I had that as its own category called important win. And out of all the different games, obviously every win's important, but to me, that was a really important win for the Irish, especially because I think by the end of the season, this is going to age well. This is my guess, is that Louisville's going to play well and be in the mix for the ACC. And so I think this game was extra important for them to win. I don't think it was perfectly on script. It was kind of sloppy. People were dropping the ball all over the place in that game. I guess it might have been something to do with the weather, but that was a good win, and Louisville does look like a good team. So that's good for the Irish, and it looked amazing on TV.
Yeah, right. No, very true. What's your number 2?
Number 2 is just awesome receivers. So Ja'Cory Brooks and Colin Lacey on Louisville, each week, one of them, if not both of them, are good for a highlight reel catch. It seems to happen every week, and Lacey got another one this week. Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. I mean, Jesus, he's good. Jacoby Lane at USC showed up big for the Trojans, and then Ryan Williams at Alabama. Who is this guy? Holy smokes! And he's a freshman.
Yeah. Well, did you hear he's 17 years old? How many times did they announce that during the broadcast?
It's absurd how good that guy is. I mean, if Alabama has that. I mean, God.
Yeah.
That guy's amazing.
No, he's incredible, and as a true freshman, having that impact is significant. So save the game.
And there's others, Smith on Georgia had some good plays. I mean, there's lots of good receivers, but I just kept making notes every time I saw just a stunning catch, like defender draped all over them, one-handed, I don't know, turning around, whatever you call what Ryan Williams was doing with that bobble catch thing, and just regaining his balance, and then having the wherewithal to still juke a guy. There's just awesome receivers right now on a lot of these big teams, and I'm sure I'm missing out some other great ones. I know that Maryland looked good for SMU. Oh, SMU, by the way, earned pole position there, and Nittany Lions earned the T-shirt here, so we'll talk more about that. But just the receiver play on the top teams is just outstanding.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, and that's something that's changed in the last few years. Having a dominant wide receiver or dominant wide receiver play has become extra important in college and the NFL, really. And so it's becoming a key position, just like defensive end or quarterback or something. Okay, so
Totally.
my number two best thing from the NCAA this weekend is Oklahoma's defense. And this is because historically it's never been really that strong. It's always been an amazing offense, and they need, just a defense that's good enough to keep them in something. But that's gonna be a real problem when you play good teams, because you have to have a lights out defense if you want to make it forward, especially in this era with the playoffs. So the defense has to be excellent. And Oklahoma was down 11 points in the fourth quarter. And the way the broadcast talked about it, like, and the quarterback was great. He's another freshman who's playing it, who played really well. But it was a pick six that sealed that game by Oklahoma's defense, and they were harassing, the quarterback, and wouldn't allow like a lot of running plays and stuff. So that's Oklahoma's defense. I've never seen them like that, and for them to get a pick six to win the game is really different to how this defense has played for years, and it just makes it so much more exciting now. There's a bye week, and then they play Texas, so there'll be two ranked teams playing again for the Red River Shootout. So that's always better, and on the road at Auburn, like that's a good good job on them.
Yeah, that was one of your games you had on your watch list, and yeah, I had eyes on that game too. Yeah, that I think you would expect this with Venables sooner or later as the head coach. There's no way he's going to be coaching a team and having the defense not look like a Venables defense. So it's coming around.
So. I think so too. But I mean, Lincoln Riley is a really good coach, and their defense hasn't been the best, and everyone knows that, and they've made it a priority, and it hasn't changed. So it's not a given that it just happens. You know what I mean? So that's the hats off to them, because that was having them win a game with their defense essentially is something that I haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm. No, that looked good. All right. So my number one best ever is Jalen Milroe.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was a man amongst boys on that field. I know that Georgia had the massive comeback in the second half and could have won the game, and then they just snatch it right back from them. What did they say? The broadcast said Georgia only had the lead for 13 seconds and then gave it right back up. And I've heard a couple other people comment saying that DeBoer's getting more out of Milroe than Saban's structure could have or might have. So if that's true, and this is an example of utilizing him better, let's say, than Saban might have, this is scary. And again, this comes back to my absurd notion that Alabama wouldn't be that good this year just because Saban's gone. So dumb. But he just looked completely unstoppable. He kind of looks like, in middle school where one kid's just bigger, stronger, faster. It kind of has that look, even against Georgia. I mean, it was absurd how good he looked on that field, both running and passing. He's really efficient. What was he, over 80%?
Yeah.
Like with his passing efficiency. I mean, how are you supposed to beat a team like that?
Yeah.
He's just overwhelming. I mean,
27 for 33 for 374 yards, and he ran for 117.
Yeah, and it's not like they were playing Vandy. No offense, Vandy fans. I mean, come on. That was Georgia.
Yeah.
And they had no answer for him. Just nothing at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was that. I mean, now he's pushed himself to the two things his performance did and Carson Beck's performance did. It pushed Milroe to the front of the Heisman, and I think eliminated Beck, even though his second half was outstanding and he got on a heater. The first half was so awful. I think, the Heisman voters being kind of as fickle as they are, or at least they just don't pay that much attention. They probably just look at how bad that first half was and be like, whatever. He put in a bad half like that. So, I mean, that game almost reminded me of the Trevor Lawrence 4 interception playoff game when he came back and won it. As that was happening in the second half, I actually had that in my notes. I was like, oh, Carson Beck's doing the Trevor Lawrence thing, like playing the worst half he's ever played, then following it up with the best half and stealing the game. So he almost did it. And then Milroe threw that bomb, and then they stole it right back. So,
the only pushback I'd have about the Milroe thing and the DeBoer, they're using him better than Saban is a hot take, is that he's got a year more experience. So when he played for Saban, it was starting for the first time, and then now he's got a year, and he's and I think because visually it looks like they're using him the same way. Like it's not too many reads with the passing, like and then using the run to set up the pass. So like it's to me he looks the same. It looks like they're using him the same way. I just think he's better, and because he's had a year more in the system and a little bit more confident and stuff. But it's the but either way, you're right. He is excellent, and it'd be tough to. I don't know how teams would game plan to stop something like that because there's a lot of different options.
Well, whatever it is, he looks overwhelming. So what do you got?
So which brings me to my number one. The best thing that I saw this weekend was Bama's first half and Georgia's second half adjustments. So that's because Bama was 30-7 at halftime. Okay. And so Georgia they were incredible. They're unstoppable. They scored 28 points in a row, and that first half, Bama looked unstoppable. And I agree with everything you said about Milroe. But in the second half, he looked more average. And I think it's because Georgia did a lot of things changes some things on defense, which took away some of the things they wanted to do. And that's now how you would stop Bama, is whatever they did in the second half, because they really limited him a lot in the second half. And I think the only reason why Bama, like what contributed to it was that Georgia had 4 turnovers. Okay. So they had 3 interceptions, but also 3 fumbles. It's actually 6, but they got 2 of the fumbles back. So you're not going to, for them to even be in a position to win that game with that many turnovers is they did a good job. So, but no, that first half was one of the more dominant things I've ever seen. So from one team over another. So I don't know if Georgia just came out slow or what the problem was, but they took them a while to get their legs underneath them. But the second half, that looked amazing. And I thought it was over when Georgia scored the late touchdown. I thought that because the defense had done a good job stopping Bama. And I didn't know they were going to come back, but it comes back to your wide receiver one that you had in your best of list. Is that guy, the freshman, is incredible, and
it's unbelievable.
Couldn't stop him. Like the catch that he made, it was a really acrobatic catch on the side. Like that's more impressive than the juggling one. The juggling one was impressive, but his body position on that long one down the sideline and then running to get all the way in he's an incredible talent.
Yeah, they're going to have to deal with him for a few years here.
I know.
Yeah, and I thought Georgia was going to complete the comeback, and my note was, this is a terrible game at the end of the first half. This is the best game at the end at that point. Yes. And then I think that if they completed the comeback, it would have been one of the greatest games ever. It still turned out to be an amazing game, but the script, it almost like that shouldn't have been the script. The comeback was the script. Like if you wanted to make a movie out of it, I was like, oh, here it goes. Like this is the worst. How can a team look that bad and then that good?
Yeah.
Like it's just unbelievable. I mean, I guess that's a testament to Kirby and the resolve of the team. Like they stuck it. I could see a lot of teams giving up at that point, but somehow they hung in there and Beck turned it on. So good for Beck. I think it shows. I don't think it knocks down Beck's draft stock per se. Like everyone can have a bad half. Like he looked bad, but boy, did he ever turn it around.
Yeah, that really says, to me, it says something a lot about his character, right? Because a lot of people would have packed it in and not have the fight or the determination, to going forward. And because it was such an insurmountable lead, it felt like at that point, like that those teams, their defenses are usually pretty good. And so like once you get a lead like that, it should be, unobtainable, but that's, hats off to them for keeping fighting and getting back into it. So that was, you're right. It was, the first half was one of the worst games I saw, but the second half was great. So, and I can't believe that Bama, it was so quiet there in the stadium after Georgia went with that go-ahead touchdown, and for them to come back and get one, that was just crazy.
It's amazing.
So what was your third worst ever from the NCAA?
Third worst ever, Oklahoma State giving up 300 rushing yards to K-State.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What is that? What you're not a serious team if that kind of number can show. I mean, that is bad. That is really bad. Like, I get
Mm-hmm.
it. Avery Johnson's good, and K-State is probably just a better team. But 300 yards on the ground, I guess this is more me thinking Oklahoma State was a contender, but they're not. There's not
Mm-hmm.
they're not a serious team in the Big 12 this year. Not after
Mm-hmm.
that.
No, that's you can't. Yeah, that's disappointing. Like, and they're and they've their offense was really inconsistent, and that was something I was really surprised at. Like, because Bowman seems to have been playing for 10 years now, and so you just would have thought with that much experience at quarterback, and anyway, yeah, disappointing. It was Kansas State's legit, but yeah, Oklahoma State, I don't know what they were doing with that.
It just makes the BYU loss to Kansas State seem more like out of nowhere.
Yeah,
I mean, they just steamrolled Oklahoma. I guess Oklahoma State's just not that good.
No, well, and I think BYU's legit. I think that's they're undefeated, and they potentially could go on quite a roll in the Big 12. So I think that that might be it too.
Mm-hmm. All right, what do you got?
Okay, so my third worst thing from the NCAA this weekend was Miami. They're finally ranked in the top 10. They're hosting a game against Virginia Tech that has looked terrible this year. And this is the game where your good teams take care of business, okay? And you just put your foot down and you win in a dominant fashion so that you can get on to next week. And for them to be down, I think it was, let me get this right. They were down by 10 in the third quarter. They were down by 10 again in the fourth quarter. Now they came back to win, which is great, but they had 3 turnovers, and just the fact that it was that close should not happen. And it's, I guess that the only pushback I would have too is that there's good teams, like usually one game in the season, was sort of an iffy one, and then that can happen. But man, I really, not this game, so I hope that was a wake-up call, because they've got Cal and then they've got Louisville. So that's they can't play like that against Louisville, but that's it shouldn't have been that close. So
It could have easily lost that game.
Yeah.
I wasn't even going to bother really getting eyes on that, but it was, it was on a light night there. So, but man, that was bad. It was just a bad showing. Cam Ward he kind of showed a little bit of his up and down there.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe that's the scare they need to pull up their socks moving forward, like you say. But yeah, that wasn't a good look for them at all.
No.
All right. So my number 2 worst ever is Illinois' rushing offense as well as its rush defense. It ran for 34 yards and gave up 240. I mean, that's
a ratio that's not going to get you too many wins.
I mean, I think you've just removed yourself from the board if that's how you're going to play defense, and that's how much you can get stuffed on offense. Now, with that said, maybe Penn State's defense is really that good, because I mean, they completely shut them down. That was a dominant performance by Penn State's defense. Again, they earned the shirt today. Now, Penn State's offense wasn't much to write home about. They didn't put up a ton of points, but man, if you're going to run for 200 and whatever it is, 39 yards, I don't think you need to put up a lot of points if you're going to run like that.
No, they had one running back go for 102 yards and the other running back go for 94. So if you're going to play like that, then, and you have amazing defense, then, that'll work. But completing 15 out of 21 passes for 135 yards is not great for Drew Aller, right? So they're going to, I'm worried that this is the same old Penn State, where they've got a good defense and they can run the ball, which works against more middle of the pack, teams. But then once they play like Ohio State or Michigan, like that won't cut it. But, that's when you're Illinois, this is the difference between the best ever and the worst ever, right? So in the best ever, Georgia's second half adjustment, Alabama was running all over them, and then they were able to stop them in the second half. And so in this game, there was no second half adjustment, even though it was clear that what Penn State's plan was. And so it is disappointing that Illinois couldn't make that adjustment.
Yeah, you're right. It could just be Penn State all over again with the whole traditional, we got to be able to run the ball and we got to be able to stop the run. And so they did. and then you get a 21-7 game. But again, is that just because it was against Illinois? Like, can you actually do that to Ohio State? I don't know. We'll find out. And the other thing is this is supposed to be that fun offense that came from the coordinator that came from Kansas, and so far it hasn't looked like a fun offense. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know I just don't get how certain teams. I've talked about this before.
Yeah.
How does a program just have an identity and it just stays that way? Because Kansas, as bad as Kansas played again, they still have a fun looking offense, even though that coordinator is gone. And like teams like Oregon, since the Chip Kelly days, have always had a fun offense. But how long ago was that? But that's just what they are now. So I don't know. I mean, they got the shirt today for how good of a defensive performance that was, but they got to prove it against the top tier teams.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about this game is that when we talked about it in our preview, we were both surprised that Penn State was favored by 19 and they won by 14. So if you're betting with Dover and Barban, you're up one. You're +1 right now. So we were still right on that.
All right, what's your number 2?
Okay, so my number 2 is and I just can't help myself, is the SMU 42 over Florida State, 16 Florida State. What's wrong? What's going on? Like it's what's surprising now is that they were supposed to be good and they're not, but it's not changing. Okay, DJU was 12 of 30 for 220 yards and 3 interceptions, well under 50% completion with 3 interceptions is terrible. The QBR was 13.2, which is terrible. So it's not only because they lost, getting blown out by SMU is, not a good thing, but it feels like they're not making any adjustments. Like they're sticking with what they wanted to do, I guess, from the beginning of the year, and it's not working. And I haven't seen I was expecting more from Norvell. I haven't seen them look this bad. I'm enjoying it, but I haven't seen them look this bad, in some time. So that was surprising.
Why do you think he's still starting DJU? It's obvious he's not.
I don't know. I don't know who the backup. I guess it's listed as Brock Glenn. Maybe, but I don't know who the backup is. But I can't believe it's that bad. It reminds me of similar to Oklahoma, where Arnold was supposed to be the guy. Okay. But after a while, when it's not working, they went and he was the 5-star, like one of the top quarterback recruits, and they go to their backup, who was a 4-star recruit. No one expected him to play this year, and he's playing really well. Now, I don't know if FSU has someone like that on the roster, but I can't believe you don't have someone that you can make the change to. So it's shocking how bad it's still going.
Well, it doesn't make any sense. The season's lost. There's a high likelihood they won't even make a bowl now.
Yeah.
This guy's terrible. Yeah. He's not the future because he's on his 6th year of college, whatever it is. He's done this year. No matter how this year goes, he's done. They can't win with him.
No.
They're losing to whoever.
Yeah.
It took everything out of them to squeeze past Cal.
Yeah.
What? Who cares who you put in? Don't leave the guy who's A, terrible, B, and not your future, and C, you've already lost the season. It doesn't matter anymore. Put anybody in there just for something different. I don't know. Put the scout guy in there and run triple option. Anything other than this. This is madness if they just march this same offense, this same quarterback out next week, and just the same thing happens. Why would you do that?
No, and next week they host Clemson, and which went from the beginning of the season, like one of the must-watch games of the season, to like maybe I'll get eyes on it or just catch the highlights. But yeah, I can't believe they don't have someone else that they want to play. So
well, I always watch FSU because it's my permanent disaster watch. So I watch all their games more for almost I don't know if it's the shock value or almost like I can't believe they're doing it again. I actually don't believe they're going to play this bad every game. At some point, I expect them to finally win, and not like the way they beat Cal, but actually put a real game together. But now it's clear they can't. They're just a bad football team.
Yeah,
they're just not good. I mean, they got shredded on defense. Both sides of the ball were terrible. There's just nothing there. I don't know I can't believe it's a talent thing. Maybe they quit, or maybe they can't. Maybe the defense is giving up because they realize they're never going to score any points. I don't know. It just looks awful, and it's shocking you went from undefeated to this. It gets really bad. All right. So
there's going to be some stat from going like 13-0 to 1 and whatever, 2 and whatever they end up is like, has to be historically one of the biggest turnarounds ever. So
it's awful. They just look terrible.
Yeah. All right. What's your number one worst thing?
Ole Miss losing to Kentucky. So I was kind of wanted to talk about Kentucky playing really good, but man, Ole Miss, you were supposed to be, I guess maybe this is a media thing, that always picking them to be really good. And this year, the schedule's favorable. Apparently not. They were supposed to be a team that was going to challenge for the SEC, and Kentucky just controlled them the entire game. And so I put this as my number one worst ever because of how disappointing it is for Ole Miss and how highly they're ranked. But maybe all of that was just false and they haven't played a super strong team. But this was the story with Ole Miss the last 2 years. It was always, they beat up on not great teams, but then they can't quite get over the good ones. And maybe this year it was supposed to be different, but just looks like it's going to be the same. And to Kentucky's credit, when it seems as though no matter how good the other team is, Georgia included, when you play Kentucky, you're playing a Kentucky game.
Yeah.
Like Georgia was playing Kentucky's game. Like Ole Miss got stuck playing a Kentucky game, which is slow, smash mouth, in the trenches, rock fight. And they control the game. When you're it seems as though when you're in a game with them, they control the game, at least against what looks like better opponents. Now I don't understand how they lost to South Carolina.
Yeah. That I think is going to be the blip on the radar. I think this is the new Kentucky team that should have beat Georgia playing this way, did beat Ole Miss playing this way. I think you're right. And that's a great point, that you're playing Kentucky's game, right? That's what they have. They dominated the time of possession. The individual stats for Ole Miss isn't that bad. Like Dart threw for a lot of yards. They had a receiver with over 150 yards. Like the running backs were averaging, was fine, but they don't give up big plays. They don't give up a lot of points, and they hold the ball. And you're playing Kentucky's game. You said it best, and they're really good. Like there's no one's going to want to play them like upcoming in the schedule, and they've got some. Let me pull it up here. So they've got like Tennessee, Texas, and Louisville on the schedule also coming up. So that like those teams are that Tennessee game is going to be great now. Because that's really good offense against an amazing defense. So I'm excited about that one, but. Man, that's Texas better not overlook them, because they're not, you can't just show up and beat this defense with the way they're playing now.
It'll be impressive if all of those games turn into a Kentucky game as well. Like they control even those teams. There's no reason to think they won't if they could do it to these two.
Yes, exactly. Like if you can do it to Georgia and Ole Miss, which is supposed to be like a Tennessee dynamic offense type thing, then they're legit.
I have a little note here before we move on to yours. Okay. Kentucky is Michigan just the Big Ten Kentucky?
Other than the fact that they're I mean
the style. When you play Michigan, you're stuck in a Michigan game.
I'd rather have Vandegrift than Orgy right now. Myself.
Oh, so you think Michigan's actually worse? Yeah, because that was pretty bad. And then I think also the other analogy that I only thought of just today was Penn State. These are all like you're kind of in their game. Yep. Maybe not as dramatic as Kentucky, but they're kind of limited. They're doing the whole run the ball, stop the run thing. But yeah, you're right. I probably would have Vandegrift. I probably would take Vandegrift over Orgy right now.
There's a difference between it. You're right about the style. Like on paper, it's like good defense and they're running the ball and stuff. But it looks like Kentucky can pass the ball when they need to, where some of those other teams don't look like they can. Like that's the difference with Penn State. Like it's their
Orgy cannot. Orgy cannot.
No, and Orgy cannot. But Kentucky could. I feel like he could pass if they need to. So that's the difference. I feel like they're choosing to be like this because this gives them the best chance to win. And they had that was one of their biggest upsets in the history of Kentucky. Is that win against Ole Miss, but because that they feel like that's the best position of for them to be in to be successful. But I think Penn State's doing it because they don't have a choice, or Michigan's doing it because they don't have a choice, which is different, so. But which brings me to my worst thing from the weekend, which is Michigan's second half against Minnesota. So Michigan, we know that we just talked about this. It's not a dynamic offense, but their defense is supposed to be amazing. And this game was way closer than it should have been. And the part what makes it and the worst ever for me is that they gave up 3 fourth quarter touchdowns. Okay. You're not supposed to be an elite team. The fourth quarter, that's why everyone holds their fingers up at the end of the third quarter, because this is what all the off season, all the training is. We want to make sure our conditioning's amazing. We're super stout in the fourth quarter because that's when you win games. And for them to be up 24-10 and then give up 3 touchdowns in the second half is ridiculous. So I just can't, that's the difference between them and Kentucky. That's why I don't put them in the same category, because I have not seen that. Kentucky plays way better than that. So they made Minnesota look way better than they are. So I was
I
really
have that exact thing on my notes. It was between the Ole Miss losing and Michigan's second half. It was terrible. They're not a serious contender if that's how. They can't finish games. They hang on for dear life. Same thing against USC. USC should have beat them. So they've done it twice against good teams. Well, I don't even know if Minnesota's a good team, but they've done it twice where they just let the other team in the second half. It's almost like these other teams don't realize what they're supposed to be doing against Michigan, and then they figure it out in the second half or something, or it's Michigan. Whatever it is, they do not close games out strong. Like good teams close games out strong. They just hang on for dear life.
Yeah, Michigan's is at Washington next week and then at Illinois the week after that. And I think both of those games it's not guaranteed they're going to win those games. So, and then they still have Oregon and Ohio State left on the schedule. So this potentially could be a rough year for them.
Yeah. All right. So I've got this other category here called not in the spirit of the game. And it was blatant. I think Ole Miss did this, where the QB just told the running back to go down.
Oh, that was
and he just
terrible.
Hit the ground. Yeah. And you can just buy yourself indefinite stoppages of play and free timeouts by doing it. And it was so egregious. I mean, the instant replay thing just had him pointing to him, just down. And then he drops. And then the announcers are like, I mean, even the announcers had to call it out. They're like, that's what can you do? But to your point, you can't call their bluff until the time that they really are injured, but it's so obvious. There has to be some kind of penalty for this. And I just think that's just such a low life move if it's being coached. And I doubt that it's the players just doing it on their own. They must be told. They must be told somewhere, "Hey, get us a stoppage if the momentum's going too quickly, or we need a rest, or whatever it is." It's just dirtbag stuff. And now that there's the microphone in the helmet, I don't know if he can just tell them that.
Right.
It's dirty. That's just, again, not in the spirit of the game at all. And on top of that, and I'll let you respond in a sec. Is the defense just meandering when they get a substitution? Happened. It's infuriating, and I get it. If the offense substitutes, the defense has to have the right to substitute. But I get the broadcast said they have to do it within 3 seconds, but that doesn't matter if they take forever to get on and off the field. And I can't remember which game it happened in, but it was so egregious. They took forever to get off the field, and then the next guy comes meandering on the field, and then he acts like he doesn't know where he needs to set up, so the defensive line just rearranges itself because he doesn't. I guess he has the right. He doesn't have to sprint to his position. They start arranging themselves, and then the offense clearly had to take a
timeout,
or take the delay of game. So you could so on either side of this, you can get yourself timeouts whenever you want by faking an injury, and you can also bleed the other team's timeouts if you do it right by doing a super slow defensive substitution. And in both cases, it's just dirtbag stuff that's not in the spirit of the game. And I don't know how you stop it. It seems like lots of teams are doing it. But again, like we said last week, you're teaching these kids that it's win at all costs, and and don't do it within the spirit of the game. Just do whatever it takes. And it's a complete contradiction of when they talk about, oh, we're not just raising football players, but we're raising men, or we're building men with character. No, you're not. You're just teaching guys win at all costs. That's all you're doing.
Yeah, no, that was so 2 points about that. So when the player went down, they clearly have a sign on the sideline. Okay, so whether it's a hand signal or thing, because they looked, the running back looked over, then looked at the quarterback, was sort of like, what is that? And the quarterback pointed at the ground, and he's like, that's the sign to get down. And then the running back went down. So they absolutely have a sign for that. So, which is ridiculous. The second thing that really bothered me about that is that they were on offense. So normally it's really bad when the defensive team does it to stop the progression of the offensive team. There it feels like it's even more egregious, because now you just can't get your act together on offense, and you're just doing it for more time. So it's both of them are really bad. Like, I think it's really bad when you're on defense and you do it just to stop with the momentum that the other team has. But for them to even just do it on offense, and for it to look like that is it's just embarrassing. Like, it's really, there's no point being in the game.
Yeah, total black eye on college football. I don't see it as much in the NFL, or they're way better at disguising it. But man, it's just so blatant in college, especially when it's captured on live TV. It's just so bad.
There was a coach, I think it was Gundy, because they were talking about, like, why do you like football so much? And then in his first thing that he said, he goes, there's nothing better than teaching men about life and accountability, and to get them ready for later in life. Like, it was the first thing that they went with. And then to have a team, do something like that is Lane Kiffin, and that's ridiculous.
All you're teaching them to do is get away with as much as they can.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
It's really bad. You got anything else?
No, I just got some flowers. You got flowers?
Let's finish with flowers. I just have my last category here is unexpected undefeateds. So UNLV, that's a good one. Unexpected. We already touched on BYU. Rutgers.
With a new QB, UNLV too, right? So that's nice.
After that whole controversy, BYU, Rutgers, Duke, let's go. James Madison.
Wow. And over 60 points again.
Yeah.
Back-to-back 60-point weeks.
Navy. And Indiana. That was we had them on the preview show on the thumbnail. That offense is fun to watch. I had eyes on that game the whole time. Super fun offense. Now, they tried their hardest to give that game away with turnovers, but they were just overwhelmingly the better team, and it just eventually they overwhelmed them. I think they're going to be actually a player here in the Big Ten. It's my prediction.
Yeah. Well, that's a good list. That's the surprising undefeateds. That's
now, there are other undefeated teams, but they're not unexpected undefeated. Yeah. I was toying with Iowa State, but is it really unexpected?
No, and I don't think, based on their schedule so far either. I think that was because hold on, let me pull it up here. So North Dakota, Iowa, Arkansas State, and Houston. So no, not completely unexpected. Things don't get real for them probably until not next week, but the week after at West Virginia, and then home to UCF. Which
let's give some respect to the Iowa fans. That's a real win.
Yeah, 20-19, the classic Iowa State game. Sure.
Yeah. All right. So flowers.
Yeah, flowers. So my first one is the UNLV quarterback, the Haj Malik Willis. So the starter for the whole season, when they're 3-0, wasn't happy about the NIL money, and so left, which feels, I get it. You have to take care of yourself, but man, I can't believe you couldn't have worked something out and just to abandon the team when they're 3-0, like, because it's solely about that's trying to send a message, like, to hurt the team. And so I'm so happy that the backup came in and looked great. He went 13 for 16 with 182 yards and rushed 12 times for 119 yards. So they look like they're going to be fine. He was the quarterback at Campbell, which I didn't realize I actually saw play last year live against North Carolina, and they made a game of it, and that's because of him. So hats off to them. Flowers for that guy, because they looks like they're He's excellent. Is going to be an upgraded quarterback, is what it looks like, and the team's rallied around him, and so nothing better than that. And it's a big game against Fresno. Like that was they hadn't beaten them in a long time, I don't think. So like that's the flowers to that guy.
Yeah, that score and that outcome I think was super surprising after the controversy.
Yeah,
with the starter. I got flowers for Noah Fafita.
Yep.
Having a big game after what looked like might have been a little bit of a disappointment, and probably threw the most impressive pass of the day. He threw a 40-yard bomb on the run touchdown after what looked like he shattered his leg on a hit right before. It looked off. I could have sworn, okay, that's every ligament in his knee had to have gone. And then he popped right back up. I don't even think he was hobbling. And then a couple plays later on the run, it was the sort of throw that I think, maybe like Caleb Williams makes that throw, but nobody else really. It was just unbelievable. So he's flowers for him. They're back in the mix after, that loss that I don't think, people might have thought, they're not good enough, but holy smokes, he looks really good.
Yeah. And it was, for me, it's another one in the Cam Rising is questionable, which I feel like has been the category for 3 years now. So it's it's too bad he's not playing, but they held Utah to 10 points, and Utah is similar to what we were talking about, like has an identity, right? Like really good defense, hold the ball, don't turn it over. And for Arizona to win this game like 23-10, as I feel like they played their game, and because Arizona normally is, that'd be like a 52-45 kind of game. That's what I think of when I think of Arizona. So the fact that they could beat them 23-10, at Utah, that's you're right. Noah Fafita's legit.
Kind of at their own game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, which makes it more impressive, because that's if it was Arizona 42-35, that's one thing, but 23-10, that's at their own game, like you said.
You got any other flowers?
Yeah, you go again. I got my next one coming up.
Well, I mean, I've already given them all sort of in my best receivers and Jalen Milroe and all the different receivers that we were talking about as my second best ever. So kind of all my flowers are already sort of out right now.
Okay. I'm gonna reluctantly give some flowers to Colorado. I don't want to watch this team. I don't want to like this team, but they look good. They look good on Saturday. And if they, like I said before, if they can play like this with competent offensive line and defensive line play, then I'm gonna have to change my tone and how I feel about them, because they're, that looks like a good football team, and it's really great anytime you can see Travis Hunter, and what he can do is just great. So I'm gonna reluctantly give some flowers to Colorado.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't feel good about it.
Yeah, but I mean, their hat's in the ring.
Yeah,
I think that makes the Big 12 more fun.
Everyone and their significant others were picking UCF to roll Colorado, and so that's what it's probably going to be. This is Coach Prime's one of his best coaching wins, I think, so far, right? So like, because they played differently. So
okay, so I got one more flower. I gave it to Texas A&M.
Oh, sure.
It was kind of, a competitive game. Arkansas hung around, neutral site and all that. And I think they're kind of off the radar, even though they're 4-1. It's, the controversy with the quarterback and all of that. So it's, I don't know. There's always a higher expectation lately than what they seem to turn out to be, but 4-1 still legit. They're still in the mix. I don't know if anyone's thinking of them as a SEC power right now, but that's a good enough record to still be in the mix. So give some flowers to A&M for the win. Yeah,
that's a good one. And the Notre Dame loss is aging better now than it did after the second week when they lost to Northern Illinois. So they've got a great record against it was like 12-1 or something ever since they joined the SEC against Arkansas. So hats off to them for continuing that going up. It's going to be makes it a really interesting game now for them hosting Missouri, because that'll be next week. So that's a nice ranked on ranked matchup now. So, and And again, there's a late season game against Texas, which hopefully would be interesting too. That's also going to be at Texas A&M. So with Texas A&M being good, that makes the season more interesting.
Yeah. And, we've got Oregon and Texas just held serve. Ohio State held serve. That's nothing really to say. Those are games they should have won, and they did win. They should have won them convincingly. They did win them convincingly.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's why we're not talking about those teams, even though they're top teams in the country. These weren't challenges. They weren't meant to be challenges. They weren't supposed to be challenges, and they weren't. Mm-hmm. So they just showed up the way they're supposed to show up.
Yeah, that's what Miami should have done to Virginia Tech and didn't. So that's
exactly
the Texas. That's exactly what Texas is supposed to do. Exactly what Ohio State's supposed to do. So yeah, and even with Arch Manning, it's still legit. So I don't know if it's not a quarterback controversy, probably, but man, it's.
Do you think Ewers is ever going back in, or that's it?
I don't know. I mean, he's got to be thinking, I have to start playing again. Like, because you can't, a few more games. Like if they've got a bye week and then they play Oklahoma. So I'm assuming he's 100% for Oklahoma. Because
Ewers.
Ewers is. So I'm assuming that has to be the case, because if Manning beats Oklahoma, then I don't know why you wouldn't start the next one, so that's.
If he beats Oklahoma, I don't see how you make a case to put Ewers back in.
No, I don't. I think if Ewers has to play against Oklahoma. He's got 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks. So he has to be better by then, I'm assuming. So
regardless, they have the best QB situation in the country, and it's not even close.
No, next to the Green Bay Packers, I think. So
yeah, totally. Yeah. All right, I think that's it. You got anything else?
No, that's good for me.
Man, I just do not know how the NFL is going to win this week. This was so good. But anyways, we'll get to it. So that's it for today's reaction, and stay tuned for our NFL reaction tomorrow.